Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Beyond the To-Do List. I'm your host, Eric Fisher, and this is the show where I talk to the people behind the productivity. This week, I'm excited to share with you a conversation I had with Nir Bashan. He's the author of the book, The Creator Mindset, 92 Tools to Unlock the Secrets to Innovation, Growth, and Sustainability. And in this book, he talks about bridging the gap between the brain's two hemispheres, the logic-driven left and the creative inclined right, so that you can find solutions to problems by using both hemispheres. Hence the creator mindset. It's about being creative without leaving the analytical side out of it and vice versa. So I really think you're going to enjoy this if you've ever had trouble being creative when you're mostly analytical, or being analytical when you're mostly creative. This is about using your whole brain. So I'll just get out of the way and say, enjoy this conversation with Nir Bashan. Well, this week, it is my privilege to welcome to the show Nir Bashan. Nir, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Eric. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah. So, man, we're going to touch on some stuff here that, we've talked about periodically throughout the course of this show. But specifically, we're going to talk creativity, but I think we're going to talk about it from a different angle because you've got this brand new book out called The Creator Mindset, 92 Tools to Unlock the Secrets of Innovation, Growth, and Sustainability. And, for me going through the book, one, I love diving into creativity, but you're approaching it from not the normal angle that people typically talk about creativity. You're talking about making creativity an everyday thing in companies, in the workplace, in our workflow even. And so I'm curious how you landed upon, this idea of integrating creativity into the workspace.
Yeah, totally. And thanks for reading it, Eric. I cannot thank you enough for going through it. I'm still very, very much touched by people going through and picking up a copy and buying it. I get emails from all over the world. And, every time I get an email, it's like a little treat, it inspires me so much to see that people are getting good value out of the book. And I appreciate you reading it. This book came from really a lifetime of trying to figure out how to do better in business at work through my careers. And later when I started to run and own my own companies, how do I keep improving? How do I keep, innovating? How do I keep coming up with different, fresh, new ideas that would carry me to the next level and the next phase of my business or my career? And this book was born out of that. I started my career, at 14 or actually even earlier. I was 9 years old going door to door washing cars in Los Angeles. And that was a pretty awful experience, right? Because, the 80s and, most people didn't want their fresh, brand new 1981 Pontiac 6000 washed by a 9-year-old kid asking for keys, right? Like nobody wants that. They're like, yeah, no. And so I ended up learning that I had to get creative in order to make that sale and in order to grow my 9-year-old business, right? And so I ended up washing trash cans and doing all of this stuff that was what needed to get done. What I was putting out in the marketplace was not what the market wanted to consume. They didn't want car washes from a 9-year-old. They wanted a 9-year-old to sweep their front porch and, pick up crap that's on their lawn that they didn't want to pick up. And, all of these sort of things. So my business merged into cleaning and that sort of thing. And I learned how to do that in order to make money. So fast forward to later in life, I worked in Hollywood. I worked in the music business, and I would see all of these celebrities and music stars show up with a predictable and repeatable sense of creativity, right? What we think of as creativity in our mind's eye is always like, oh, this person is inspired. Wow. They're divinely, and they're so much better than we are. Oh, wow. This celebrity is, oozing creativity. But what I found after working in Hollywood and working in music is that it's absolutely not true. What we have here is a process. And these people are following a predictable, regular, regimented process in order to get creative. And I was like, okay, cool. And then I had a business where I had a furniture refinishing business for a while, totally not creative, but I started to use creative tools to excel and do better in that business. And fast forward to today, I own a consultancy, with 3 small but mighty employees, and we practice creativity as a regular basis every day. And what I want your listeners to understand is that creativity is not just the realm of a few chosen people. Everybody, every man and woman on earth has the ability to become and to embed creativity in everything they do. We just need to learn how. And that's why I wrote the book, The Creator Mindset.
So if I'm hearing you right, you're really stating that it's not a select few inspired geniuses that can just run with creativity, that in fact, as you state in the book, everything that has to do with the creative process or creativity can be learned and implemented by people who think they're not creative.
Absolutely. And that is where I do the bulk of my life's work, right? I work a lot with financial groups. I work a lot with the real estate groups. And time again, people tell me, Nir, I love Elon Musk or Steve Jobs, or whomever their particular hero is, but I could never be as creative as that person. I could never be, Susan Nabby of Cody. I can never be her. She's super amazing. And she's constantly coming up with ideas and brilliantly leading and changing and innovating her company. And I can never be that person. And I say, well, why not? And people are always like, because she has a gift, or, Elon Musk, he has a gift and this and that. And I'm like, well, their gift is that they're able to be in touch with something that we've all traded away, but you can learn how to get it back, and you can learn how to spark that creativity and rehash that sort of childhood wonder in order to be able to solve problems at work today. And usually when I say that, people want to learn more.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people out there that even if they are creative and they've sort of learned this, whether they've decided to learn it intentionally or they've picked it up as they've gone along, or if they're not thinking that they're creative, though, they still, when it comes to business or productivity, come from that left side of the brain instead of the right side of the brain. And, and you're talking about bridging the gap between the two hemispheres of the brain, using them together.
Yeah, you bet. So using the logic and the creative part together is the secret, right? A lot of people say, this is great. I just want to be fully creative now. Well, the problem with that is that, we all have that friend that lives in their parents' basement, right? And they're 45 and they haven't moved out yet. It's like, great. They're really creative, but they're not getting anywhere. And then you and I both have those friends that are really analytical, but they're miserable, right? Yeah, they might have a nice house and a nice car and all that stuff, but they're incredibly miserable because they're not really living up to their potential. So I am not saying to abandon one or the other. I'm saying to merge the two into this supercomputer that your brain is able to work as. But sadly, Eric, most of us don't do that. And it's horrible. What ends up happening is we're either, the far majority of us are analytical. A few of us are creative, the Susan Nabbys and the Elon Musks of the world, right? And so what we end up having is a society that hasn't reached its goals. It hasn't reached its proper human evolution, right? So what we have is stuff that is just, kind of not good enough, right? In aviation, we fly on the 737 plane, which was invented almost now 50 years ago. There are innovations that enable quicker air flight, better routing through the sky, better approaches to a runway that'll cut a New York to LA journey down to like 2.5 hours. The technology is out there and all that stuff, but we're not doing it. Why? It's because we've settled on what's comfortable for us. Well, if it ain't broke, well, then why change it and why fix it? But what we're missing here is the amazing and wonderful capacity of humanity to elevate the human condition. And that, for me, the shame. And that is what I've spent my life trying to change. The understanding that your product or service or your business is really important, no matter what it is that you do, and elevating it to encompass creativity and analytics together in a super combination is required. I don't think it's just required for your job or your career or your particular business. I think it's required to evolve humanity.
Here's the thing. I think that, again, for most people, they may feel stuck, or they may feel like they've lacked the internal or even external permission to be creative, which I think you're stating, no, you have that. Go ahead and do it. But then they would still feel like, well, I don't know how to get started in terms of, again, bridging that gap between left brain and right brain. What's a good starting point here for somebody who accepts that, no, you know what, I'm going to take ownership of, yes, I will be creative. I want to try to start doing that. What are some of the tools or principles or practices that people can get started with to start to gain momentum in bridging that gap and becoming or accepting creativity?
So I have several tools that help. There's 92 of them in the book. But the one that I like the best is really starting to write stuff down. When you write stuff down, you enable a different portion of the mind to take over, and your precious ideas and stuff like that don't become that precious anymore because you're able to write them down and kind of separate them from being inside your head and into something tangible and apparent. The other thing that I really like that people can do today is to define the concept, the idea, and the execution of their career, product, service, whatever. The concept is the biggest way to look at it. The idea is the mid-level view, and the execution is where we spend most of our time. That's the laser focused part of our job. But if we're able to grab a sheet of paper and write down all three different implementations of our product, service, or our careers, then we're able to find and make creativity happen whenever it is that we want to do it. And just the act of setting those three parameters up on a sheet of paper enables you to start to make creativity happen. Now, it's not about getting inspired. It's not about, jogging for 6 hours and then, coming up with an idea because you've cleared your head. I mean, if that's working for you, then that's fine. But we need a repeatable, quick, easy way to become creative. And that concept, idea, and execution, once you write it down, enables you to make ideas stat. I mean, just right away, boom. And then you're able to take a couple of ideas and then use them in the next Zoom meeting or go to, or whatever it is that we're on all day today. It's a way to practice and manufacture creativity. And by the way, this is what some of the greatest creative leaders of our time that we all respect and love, this is exactly what they do. They have a process. This is what the Hollywood stars do. This is what the music stars do. This is how they come up with ideas.
Yeah. So it's not even just generating the ideas, but then starting to act on them, right? Because that's, for me, I have heard, and I'd love to get your definition of the word creativity here in a second, but what I've heard is that creativity is really problem solving, but I don't know if it's just that. I think it's maybe identifying the problem first as well, but then coming up with solutions to the problem.
Yeah, definitely. So for me, creativity is the ability to solve a problem in a way that has not existed before. That's what the definition of creativity is for me. And when you apply that at work, it is, listen, we're in a bad cash flow situation. We might have to lay some people off. 99% of people would go to the analytic tools, right? Which is restructuring, which is just a fancy way of saying we're going to fire people. We're going to do, some, payroll cuts, or, we're going to kill some of the benefits, or however it is. All those things are analytic. But when we're able to solve problems creatively, we're able to make a real difference, right? We're going to say, okay, those are the time tried, true sort of approaches to this problem. Why don't we look at it differently? And why don't we, run a concept, an idea, and execution on this particular problem, and then try to reimagine this problem as it can be, not as it is. And that's what really, really separates creativity at work from other types of, music creativity or art or something like that. Being able to imagine what a problem can be rather than what it is really the secret to solving it creatively.
And for a lot of people out there, again, they have this old mindset of what being a creative or what creativity means. And they go to that, I'm not an artist. I'm not somebody who's based in artistic expression of some sort. But what they fail to then realize is that by doing this creative problem solving, by creating a solution that's never been done before, they are doing, in effect, creative expression.
100%. Absolutely. And this is an important thing. And this is what we need more of in the world. You know, we need more people to come up with creative solutions so that our lives get better. I'll go back to the airline example, right? You might say to me, Nir, what's the point? I mean, you know, you can get in LA, New York, it's 5 hours. Why would you want to shorten that time? And I tell you, well, you know, maybe there's a sick person, God forbid, on that flight. And, you know, those 5 hours that they've spent on the airplane going to see their relative, you know, maybe a shorter flight, they could have spent more time with them. Is that an important goal for us to work on? And, you know, that depends on who you are as a person and what your company is doing, right? Because creativity is innate. It's in our DNA. And the way that I practice creativity is not going to be the same way that you, Eric, practice creativity or that your listeners do it. It depends on what your values are and what your moral compass kind of guides you to do. But I can come up with a list of 100 different reasons why it would be better for society for a flight to be half as long from LA to New York, and why that investment is critical, not only for a particular company's market advantage or profitability or, you know, really revenue, which is, you know, churning as much revenue into profit as humanly possible, why those things are important. But, you know, those things need to come from the brand itself, from the person in their career themselves. They need to be able to be empowered in such a way to say, this is important. This is what we need to be doing. This is how we leave our mark. Listen, most of us spend our life, Eric, working in some job, right? We work there 30, 40 years. We switch careers around. You know, we retire and we die. That's it. I know it's depressing, but that's it. And we have an ability, though, during our careers and during our lifespan to actually do something cool and different and special. And I'm not saying that, you know, everything that you do at work is going to be special or whatever. And, you know, you're listening to me and you're saying, Nir, that's cool, man, but I'm a dry cleaner. Like, I don't work at NASA. I don't do anything important. I clean people's clothes. And that's what I do. And that's my contribution. And I say to that, well, you know, how about the confidence that you instill into somebody who's, you know, putting on your clothes and going to a meeting, and that, you know, meeting is, I don't know, to lessen climate change or, you know, help somebody, you know, it's a doctor that helps cure some kid. You know, you don't know. There is not a direct relationship when you look at things creatively between your product and service and helping humanity, right? But that dry cleaner who goes, you know what, I'm going to do an a la carte, because every dry cleaner charges, you know, $10 for a top and $15 for a skirt. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do a la carte, $30 a month or $40 a month, all in. You can bring as many clothes as you want. I'm going to get really creative about it. And then that person who sets up that type of billing model attracts a certain kind of person who's going to go, you know what, whether I take 10 shirts in or 100 shirts in, it's one price, I'm in. Right? I love it. They sign up, they bring their shirts in, and that shirt makes somebody feel, or that dry cleaning service makes somebody feel particularly smart, particularly good that day, particularly able to solve a problem. And the amount of lives that you've touched by having a creative output of your service or your product or your career can last a lifetime. And that is what we need to be focusing on in our day-to-day. Those are the touch points that really change humanity and elevate the ability of us to evolve as a species. And these are the things that creativity enables.
I know that you talk about creativity in the form of a trinity, and you even have these three cornerstones, if you will, of creativity for business being humor, empathy, and courage. I'm curious why those three things are that trinity or those cornerstones.
So I've spent a long time figuring this stuff out, right? And humor enables you to look at a problem in a different way. It doesn't really have to be funny all the time, but what humor does and the way that humor works is an instant look at something that occurs in a different way. And when you're able to look at something that occurs in a different way, you are being creative. And humor is a easily obtainable outlook that people can employ quite easily to look at a situation or a problem in a different way. Empathy is incredibly important because once we're able to really look and feel and be in somebody else's shoes, we're able to get out of our own heads for a minute, right? And if we're able to get out of our own heads for a minute, Eric, we can then solve problems in a different way. Finally, you got to have the courage to take the leap of faith on this stuff, right? Creativity is not easy. It's not easy for that dry cleaner to go, you know what, I'm going to abandon my $10, $15 model and go a la carte because I might lose money. And they're damn right they might lose money, because what will happen is 80% of the time they'll make money, but 20% of their customers will come in every day and they'll lose money on that account. They won't make money on the $40 a la carte a month or $60 a la carte a month. They'll lose money because that person will take advantage of it, right? But at a certain point, you got to say to yourself, you know what? Even if I do an 80-20 thing where, 80% of the time I make money and 20% of the time I lose money, it's worthwhile for the business. Why? Because it is creative. Why? Because it's innovative. Why? Because people who sign up for, the a la carte tend to be customers for 10 months. And people who do, the all in tend to be customers for 18 months. And 18 months is what I'd rather do because I've done the math. Again, it's not about throwing away analytic. I've done the math and okay, cool. That customer's, 2.3 times more valuable than the a la carte customer. Boom. I'm okay taking the 20% loss on the guy coming in every day with a shirt, but in the long run, that makes a better sense. It's that kind of mentality and that kind of courage that we need in order to innovate. And I'm talking about a dry cleaner here, but we can easily be talking about a person curing cancer as well. They need to have the courage to take a crazy idea of, I don't know, a Zika virus from a mosquito and applying that to a particular type of childhood cancer and, curing it. We need people to have those types of ideas, those types of creative ideas, and have the courage in order to get them out into the marketplace.
If I'm hearing you right, these three different modes, although probably there's some crossover between all three of them, and really using all of them at once could be really helpful. But from what I'm analyzing here, from what I'm hearing you say is, humor is you getting outside of your own normal, stodgy view. Empathy is taking on, in other words, it's literally empathizing with somebody else and getting in their shoes and encourages risk taking. And that all three of these things, in various percentages, but again, all three put together, get you into that, again, mindset of finding a way to do something, or in better words, finding a solution, like you were saying, to a problem that's never been done before.
Correct. Exactly right. And they're not that hard. Everything I talk about in the book, Eric, is free. It really is. It's free. You don't have to buy a piece of machinery and that sort of thing, but you have to actively change your mindset when it comes to looking at problems. And my method is not a get rich quick thing. It's really a get rich slow scheme, right? Really slow. And one foot in front of the other, making better and better choices every day to allow you to make creative, innovative, and new solutions to problems that exist today and don't exist yet. It's really all about a measured and careful approach into what may or may not come up in your business.
I think one of the other things that I'm hearing is that we've just got to start getting out of the regular routine or the regular tools that we're using. I know that you talk about putting limits on technology so that our creativity has a chance to bloom and to grow.
Yes. Limiting technology is really important to maximizing creativity. A lot of these tools that we have today, we've fallen in love with, right? We think, this app is going to solve every problem that I've ever had. And they don't solve anything. They're simply, maybe a streamlined approach to how you would work. But I don't know, if you've done a lot of work in technology as I have, you'll find that, some of these apps that are productivity apps or whatever, they force you to work the way that they want you to work. They don't work the way that you want them to work. Look at an average CRM. CRM satisfaction scores are some of the lowest of any piece of software. They're supposed to make your life easier, but most people I know hate them. Then they make people's life harder because they force you to work in a rubric of some developer's mindset. So I think what we need to do is step back from technology, shut off our phones once in a while. I'm terrible at this. I'm like the dentist with bad teeth, Eric. But I really think that, the more that we do of this, the more creativity will emerge.
Yeah, I think that for me, and this even goes back to, you were talking earlier about writing things down. For me, going and, as much as is humanly possible, or duplicating this at home, sitting down with a cup of coffee in a coffee shop, or again, outside or somewhere where it's nice, having a pad of paper and not having technology with you, and just starting to work on something analog mode for a while starts to get my juices flowing.
Yes, old school stuff is really good. In-person stuff is really good. I know we're in the middle of a pandemic. We're recording this show on April 8th, 2021. And yeah, I know that what's going on in the world, but anytime, when it's safe and that kind of thing, anytime we can do stuff in person, attention spans these days are insanely bad, right? Everybody's, doing this and that and on the phone and in a meeting at the same time while, sending off an email and trying to listen here and multitasking and all this stuff. It's just a myth. None of it works. Multitasking is like the biggest sham ever. Multitasking doesn't work. The ability of humanity to walk and chew gum, yeah, that's there. You could drive a car and listen to the radio, but you cannot execute high level thinking by doing two things at the same time. I mean, walking and chewing gum is almost an automatic thing, but listening to this podcast and sending out an email for work ain't going to happen. So I recommend you stop and you focus on the things that are most important to you. And when you're able to do that, you're going to allow a certain type of creativity to emerge just by saying, you know what, multitasking is not working, and I'm going to pick and choose throughout my day what I need to focus my attention on. If you don't schedule and you don't pick and choose your day, somebody else will do it for you. I've worked at a lot of places, and now, having my own company, I see that happening, pretty much every day. If I don't block out time for what I need to do, somebody else will fill it in. And so what I recommend is, starting to own that process within your day-to-day life of saying, you know what, the technology needs to be limited. I need to step back from this. I need me time for an hour here. I need me time for an hour there, and start scheduling this stuff and focusing when you need to focus and relaxing when you need to relax.
Well, and the other key piece there about blocking that time out is that you're, one, calendaring it, for lack of a better term, for yourself. You're having a meeting with yourself for a specific reason. But that also means you get to block off or put up the barriers there of entering into that time by putting on Do Not Disturb and getting into a workspace that can be conducive to creativity. In other words, there's not distractions coming up or whatever. Although I will say sometimes when I want to get creative, like I said, with the analog mode, I'll be at a coffee shop if possible. And there is distraction, but it's not distraction. It's almost someone like me who's got ADHD and has learned to live with that, knows that having that ambiance and even other people around me, my brain will then get distracted in a good way, blocking that out so that the right part of my brain to do the work and sit and be creative can actually do that.
Yeah, again, every manifestation and creativity is different. It's different for every person on earth. Why? It's because it is intricately and innately woven into the fabric of who we are, right? 65, 70,000 years ago, the first creative idea was born by a woman named Harriet, who was being attacked by a beast. The beast was far larger and far stronger than us. And it had, big fangs and like claws the size of a school bus. I don't know, maybe that's an exaggeration, but huge claws. And, they were faster and stronger than we were. But Harriet saw a stick that was nothing but a walking stick. She saw a berry picker that was nothing but, something to get berries off the bushes. She put the two together and made the world's first spear. And that spear was able to stave off the beast. And here we are in 2021, with the gifts of creativity having influenced our life to literally make us survive to this day. And so because that creativity comes from who we are as children, we were all born creative and we lose it as we get older. If you go to a coffee shop and that distraction somehow helped you, do it more and more and more, because that is what will help you become, creative. And so different people will practice it in a different way. As long as you're practicing it, we're in good shape.
Well, and I think that's the key there is it's going to be different for everybody, but the principles here are possible to learn. And honestly, we've only scratched the surface. There are 92 tools to unlock creativity from this book. And I would love to start pointing people to where they can find it. Is there any best place that you have set up where people can get a deeper and or more comprehensive taste of what's in the book?
Yeah, so we have a website. It's thecreatormindset.com. You can go there, download a free chapter, which is always fun. The book's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. If you want to put on a mask and go, it's in just about every Barnes & Noble in the U.S. and other bookstores, independent bookstores, stuff like that. It's a McGraw-Hill business release. I would love for you to check us out online. My name is nearbashan.com. It's my name.com. It's really easy. I would love to hear from your listeners and see what they think of the book.
Awesome. Nir, I will make sure to link up to everything in the show notes for this episode. And thank you so much for sharing today.
Eric, an absolute pleasure.
Well, that's another podcast crossed off your listening to-do list. I hope that you enjoyed this conversation with Nir Bashan. I hope that you found it useful to crack through some of those roadblocks and hindrances you may have when it comes to being creative and or using your whole brain to solve problems. If you enjoyed this conversation, I would love for you to do me the favor of sharing this episode with somebody you know needs to hear it. You can do that by hitting the share button in your podcast player app of choice, wherever you're listening to this, or hit the share button over on the show notes for this episode at beyondthetodolist.com. That would really help me out sharing the show. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next episode.